Hello my beauties, welcome back to my channel. This is Fumibi here again with another tutorial. In today's video we are going to be making this ruched headband. This headband is so freaking beautiful and it's perfect for both adults and children. So if you're looking for something nice for your baby girl or for yourself or for your niece or for anybody around you who would love something like this tutorial is supposed to help you learn how to make it in very easy steps. So if you'd be interested in learning, please be sure to watch this video to the end, like, share and subscribe. Alright guys, let's get straight into it. Alright guys, so as usual I'm going to show you everything you need. You need a small plastic headband. This headband is about half an inch wide, very slim. You also need your scissors, you need some pins for holding your fabric in place, you need your tailor's chalk for marking measurements and all that, and then you need a piece of fabric. This fabric, I don't know, it's not satin, it's not something, it's just a glossy fabric. I got it from the fabric store the other day. So you're going to put your fabric on fold and you're going to measure about 22 or 20 inches on fold, depending on you and how ruched you want your fabric to turn out. Next up, for the width of the fabric, you're going to measure 8 inches and you're going to mark that all around the dimension that you're going for. For me, I'm working with about 22 inches. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, moving on to the next step, I'm going to be cutting out the markings that I did on my fabric, the 8-inch mark. I'm cutting it out, and yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing here. Once I'm done doing that, I'm going to fold my fabric into two, and then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and sew all along the length of the fabric. But then I'm going to leave about 2 to 3 inches of space for turning the fabric inside out. You guys are going to see how we are going to go about turning the fabric inside out. So you're sewing as close to the edge as possible, say on 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, but don't go past 1/2 of an inch. You're going to sew all the way to the end of the fabric and then leave some space for turning the fabric inside out. Alright guys, so I'm going to go straight to my sewing machine and then do everything I just explained. Okay guys, so this is my fabric after sewing, and yeah, I'm going to adjust it just a little like this. I don't know how to explain the adjustment, but you're going to make sure that your seam line is facing you. So this is the space that I left, so you're going to adjust the fabric so that the seam line is facing you. So where you joined your fabric together, you're going to have it face you right, and then you're going to go ahead to press the fabric. Try as much as possible to press it and just give it a good press. Basically, if you left an allowance of 1/2 an inch, try and open up the seam allowance, but if you didn't, just give the fabric a good press. That's what you want to do. Next up, you're going to mark 1/2 an inch on both sides of the seam line, just like I'm doing here. So after adjusting your fabric such that the seam line is facing you just the way mine is, you're going to mark 1/2 an inch on the two sides of your fabric. After doing that, you're going to join just a simple straight line, and on that straight line you're going to measure about 4.5 inch and then mark it. I'm not sure if you guys will understand everything I'm saying, but just watch everything I'm doing on my fabric and replicate it on yours and be sure that we are both going to have the exact same result. So what I'm doing here is I'm just joining just a straight line. I've not measured it yet. So after I drew that straight line, I went about marking 4.5 inch on that line that I just drew, and I'm going to repeat it on this other line as well, mark 4.5 inch. So on the other extreme end of this, my fabric that I sewed together, I'm going to repeat this exact step. Draw a simple line, mark 1/2 an inch on the two sides of the seam line, and then mark 4.5 inches on the line that you drew. Just the exact same thing I'm doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that on the other side of the fabric. Alright guys, so after doing this, I'm going to get my armhole curve and then just give that point where we marked the 4.5 inch. I'm going to draw just like a slight curve using my armhole curve, just to give me like a curved effect right at the end of that, or right at the tip of that line that I drew. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm also going to repeat this exact step on the other side of the fabric where I marked my 4.5 inch and just did all these dimensions. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that as well with my armhole curve. The reason why we are doing this, you guys are going to understand when we go ahead in this tutorial. If you've made it up to this point and you're yet to hit the like button, please do well to hit the like button. That button just helps YouTube spread my videos to a wider audience, and it also helps to grow my channel. Thank you guys so much. Alright guys, so after doing that, after marking the curves on the two sides of the fabric, I'm going to go ahead and sew on all the lines that I just marked on my fabric. So follow the curve of that my armhole curve line, and then sew all the way down to the end of the fabric, and then close up the bottom of the fabric as well. I'm also going to repeat that exact same step on the other side, and this is what we have here. I'm already done sewing on those lines. I don't know if you guys can see it, so I'm just going to go ahead to do a bit of trimming, cut off the excess fabric outside of the markings. So try to cut as close to your seam line, but try not to cut through your seam, because that's just going to ruin all the work that you've put into this job. So that's exactly what I'm doing here, cutting off the excess fabric, and then I'm going to repeat it on the other side of the fabric as well, cut off the excess fabrics, and then we're going to move on to basically turning the fabric inside out. And yeah guys, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so let me just go ahead to quickly cut off the excess fabric, and we'll move on to the next stage in this tutorial. Alright guys, so now that I'm done cutting off the excess fabric, it's time for me to turn my fabric inside out. And what I'm doing is I'm just using my screwdriver here, my long screwdriver, just to push out the fabric. And once I was done pushing it out, I also went ahead again to use the same screwdriver to push out all the edges of that turning, especially because of that small piece. So that's 1 inch space that we did a bit of marking and curving and all of that. That space is quite narrow, so you have to push in your screwdriver just to push out all the edges of that particular point where you sewed on this fabric. That part of this tutorial can be a bit painstaking, but it's not as stressful as it looks, okay? Just try your best to push your screwdriver through that hole and make sure everything has come out properly. And this is what you should have once you've done that effectively. So the next thing we are going to do now is basically we are going to repeat that same thing on the other side of the fabric, and this is what we have here. So we've pushed out all the edges of our fabric, and our fabric is inside out. So basically our right side is now out, and it's time for us to move to the next stage. So the next stage in this tutorial is on this joining. So where your seam line is showing on the right side of the fabric, you're going to go ahead to mark 1/2 inch on the 2 sides of that seam line, just the way we did when we were trying to get that pointy ends of the fabric. We're going to repeat it on this outer part of the fabric. So you're marking 1/2 inch on the 2 sides. So this is what 1/2 inch looks like on your tape rule. So that's middle line that is kind of longer than the other lines. You're going to mark that point on the 2 sides of your seam line. So you're going to repeat it all the way to the end of your fabric, and once that is done, you're going to now draw a line that will connect all those markings that you did, just help with precision when you're sewing on your sewing machine. After drawing that line, you're going to take your fabric to your sewing machine and then sew all the way through. You're going to sew on that line that you marked, and once that is done, we're going to come back to our table to continue the job on this headband. So this is what the fabric looks like after sewing. And you remember that we left this space. You remember that 2 to 3 inches space I told you guys to leave. This is where that space is going to now become useful for this tutorial. You're now going to pass that your small headband through that space and try to just push your fabric through, push it through. If you did all the appropriate markings on your fabric, your headband is supposed to pass through seamlessly, and you're just pushing through and trying to ruch your fabric. Basically, is it ruche or ruch? Anyway, you're passing your fabric and then giving your fabric this gathered ruched effect. And yeah, once that is done, you're going to repeat it on the other end of your headband, and make sure that your headband is completely inside this fabric. And this is what the end result is supposed to look like. This is what your ruched headband is going to look like. Once all this is done, make sure you don't forget to close that 2 to 3 inches space using some simple stitches with your needle and thread. And voila guys, we are done with making this beautiful headband. So this is the final result. I'm not going to be wearing it on myself because my hair is not in a style that is appropriate for this headband. If you enjoyed watching this tutorial, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. Also, if you're yet to subscribe, please do well to subscribe to my channel, join my family. And yeah guys, I can't wait to see you in my next tutorial. Love you. Also, don't forget to share the tutorial, okay? Alright guys, love you guys so much, and I can't wait to see you in my next one. Bye.